Hey everybody, welcome back to Montreal Connected. Now, two-time MVP Steve Nash will miss the entire NBA season with a back injury. For a look at Nash's career, we bring in Stephen Brunt from our Sportsnet studios in Toronto. How's it going, Stephen?
Hey, Walter.
Now, Nash is 41 years old. Does the back injury spell the end?
Yeah, I think he's done, and I think this is kind of it's a technicality in a lot of ways. He's going to go on the injured list. That'll allow his salary to be paid by an insurance company. It'll allow him to continue to be paid. So he's doing that, I think, rather than retiring. But he is physically unable to play this year, and I don't think anybody, the Lakers or Steve Nash, believes he's ever going to play basketball again. So there will be an announcement at some point down the road, a formal retirement announcement, but for technical reasons and honestly for financial reasons, he has to play it this way right now.
Yeah, it's such an unfortunate situation. But hey, listen, he's certainly Canada's best basketball player of all time. But where does that rank Nash for all-time point guards?
Well, geez, that's a great question. That's he is in the discussion. He's because of those back-to-back MVPs. That just hasn't that puts you in very, very rare air in terms of basketball. And, in terms of Canadian athletes, honestly, in terms of Canada, it puts you in a place where you could argue no other Canadian athlete has ever been. We produce lots of hockey players, but, basketball is a different equation, different depth of field. And the notion that one of our guys was the best player on earth for a couple of seasons, raises some really interesting discussion points about where Steve Nash is, not just in basketball history, but in Canadian sports history.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Canadian history, I mean, this could be like a big changing of the guard, right? I mean, Nash is headed out, but lots of young Canadian talent are entering the league. Does Nash deserve at least a part of a credit for inspiring this generation of new Canadian basketball players?
I think he does. Now, it's an interesting argument because, a lot of the guys we're seeing, the Wiggins and people like that are, if you look at how their age, they're also part of the Vince Carter echo boom from when Vince Carter was a big star with the Toronto Raptors and basketball was at a height in Canada in terms of that it had never been before. But Steve Nash, who predates that, was such an outlier. He was so much on his own. He was a guy from BC who went to got us just to get into NCAA Division I basketball on a scholarship was a big deal. For him, and then to be a first-round NBA draft choice, that was a huge deal. And then for him to play and start in the NBA, and then for him to become an all-star and an MVP, he stands alone in a lot of ways. And for a Canadian kid, I guess what it told you was it's possible, because it didn't seem possible that a Canadian could do that. Coming from this country, that you could become Steve Nash, and he was the evidence that even if it was only one guy, you as a Canadian could be that, and that had to be an inspiration for a lot of young basketball players.
And he really played the Canadian role, such a respected player in the NBA. You see the outpouring of tweets coming in from Kobe Bryant to LeBron James. Hey, Stephen, thanks so much for joining us and shining a bit of light on this. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Wilder.